Sanbonan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our very first autism seminar autism awareness seminar for the year 2023. And thank you for making time. Our speaker has long been here. I think it's about time to start. I'd like to apologize on behalf of our rector. Apparently, he's not doing well this evening. We're not sure whether he's going to join us. In his absence, I'll kindly request Louise to give us an opening prayer.
Our loving God, as we gather this evening, we come with an expectation of learning. We come with an expectation of better understanding those in our community and in our families who live with autism. We are reminded that each one of us is made in your image, and each one of us is known by you, by name, and that our deep desire is for a community of inclusivity where people feel valued no matter how they present themselves to others. We just ask your hand on this gathering this evening, that our hearts will be enriched by our deep listening of the message tonight. And then as we leave, we just pray for travel mercies to return home safely. We ask this in the name of your precious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you very much, Louise. I would like to briefly introduce our speaker, Sis Nelsiwe Dunge, who is a teacher by profession. Nelsiwe has worked with the Department of Education for years, and she has worked with children with special needs in special schools. She is an experienced teacher who has done what we call inclusive education, when they specialize now with children with special needs. And I won't mention her whole CV, otherwise she has been working as a Deputy Chief Director for the Zululand District. Now she is in the Department of Education, Gauteng Province. Of importance for us is that she has done a lot of work with an organization called Action in Autism. So I'd like to invite Nelsiwe to come and share with us what she's got on autism. Thank you.
Thank you, Sis Mbali, and good evening. And thank you for the invitation. Hopefully that you will enjoy the talk. So firstly, I know that autism is always celebrated in April. April is the month where we celebrate April, but I'm happy because now it's May. Because to celebrate autism only in April, it's not enough, because we need to do a lot of awareness. We need to do a lot of engagement so that many people can understand what autism is. And these days, I think after COVID-19, there are more and more kids that are diagnosed with autism, which means that we need to to ensure that we equip ourselves as the community, as the church, as teachers, so that we understand and we are able even to pick those traits so that we can be able to support one another. Because having an autistic child is not a child's play. It's difficult. So those who have kids that are autistic, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's difficult working with autistic children. Then you wonder how difficult it is then for the parent who stays with the child like 24/7. So hence it is important for each and every one of us to understand what is meant by autism. What is the support that we can give to the community, to the church, to those parents whose kids are autistic. Slide number 1. Okay, so slide number 1, I don't know. Unfortunately, I forgot my, yes. So last year it was easier because I had one with me. Okay, but slide number 1, it's just it's about the autism awareness, the theme for 2024. It says to acceptance and appreciation, meaning that we're supposed to have moved from conducting awareness, but we are supposed to accept autism. And we're supposed to be appreciating autism, meaning that in our community, in our churches, we're supposed to be seeing more and more people with autism. And in our schools, we're supposed to be seeing more and more autistic children. And it's a pity because some of the autistic children, they are denied education in some of our schools, just because maybe they're wearing nappies and all of that. But the theme for 2024, it's about acceptance and appreciation. Then the question that we become stuck with is, are we really accepting autism when we still have kids that are not accessing quality education? When we have kids that are in special school, yet they are supposed to be in mainstream school? Because when we speak of autism, the minute you say autism, a child has autism or the child is autistic, people have tendency to think that that child has to go to a special school. Not everyone who is autistic needs to go to a special school, but they can go to an ordinary mainstream school and they can perform to the best of their abilities. And we can think of all the people that are inventors, you know, they are autistic. Think of Henry Ford, the first person to invent a car. He was autistic. You think of the computer, all the people that are inventors, they are autistic, you know. Okay, we think of Facebook, Elon Musk, he's also. But when people think of autism, they tend to think that that person has disabilities, they have to stay behind closed doors, and there's nothing that they can do. Okay, then slide number 1. Okay, so here in South Africa, we don't have enough research that talks into the prevalence of autism. But when you go worldwide, it is said that it is between 1 to 2% of the entire population, they have autism, which means that 1 in 36 people has autism. But when we come to South Africa, we still have a challenge because most of these kids, they stay in rural areas, so the diagnosis is not made. Hence, we do not have the exact percentage, or we are not sure of the prevalence. Okay, thanks. So, what is good, and the question that is asked by people all the time, is autism maybe only affect a certain ethnic or national? No. The answer is no. So everyone can get autism. So whether you are black, you are white, you are yellow, brown, or whatever. But what is good is, because of the current research, before a child could be diagnosed at the age of 3 years, but now a child can be diagnosed at the age of 18 months because it is easy to detect those traits that are there. And for some kids, you will find that by the time the child is 10, 11, 12 months, they are able to babble and say and utter some words. And then by the time they are 15, then they regress, which could be a sign of autism. So what is good now is that immediately when the parent sees some challenges that the child is experiencing with, like for instance, if the child is not speaking by the time the child is 2 years, then there is a challenge that maybe the child has a communication problem, has a speech problem, and also maybe look for other traits, because not speaking or not being verbal doesn't mean that one has autism, but there must be other traits. Like for instance, autistic children, they do not maintain eye contact. So when you play with your child and the child doesn't maintain eye contact, and also when you have your child and there are other kids around and you find that your child doesn't mingle with the rest of the kids, that is also a red flag. That means that that child could be having autism. But what is good is every autistic person is unique, meaning that there is no one case. We cannot have an umbrella approach or a blanket approach. Hence, I was saying that some autistic people, they need to go to ordinary mainstream schools, although a small percentage should go to special school. But most of them, they are from average and above average. It's just a small percentage that is below average. But you find that they are still denied access in mainstream school just because they are under the spectrum. And what is good is that they speak intelligibly at 18 months, whereby you find that the child is speaking the language that if the child is speaking, because like I said earlier on, that a child might be non-speaking or non-verbal, but some autistic children or people, they will be speaking by the time they're 18 months, and you find that their language is so advanced than their age group. That is another, positive thing about autism. And what is said is that is what the research says, that 4 in 5 people, especially boys, 4 in 5 boys, they are diagnosed with autism, meaning that it is prevalent more in boys. And this doesn't mean that there are few girls that are affected that have autism. The reason why there are 4 boys and there is one girl in 5 girls, it is because girls, they also mask. So at times it is impossible to be able to pick the traits just because of the masking. Whereas with boys, all those traits you can tick, because the traits are there, they are available for each and everyone to see. Hence, there are more boys that are diagnosed with autism. Another slide. Okay, the question is, what is autism? Because we're talking about autism spectrum disorder. Yes, it is a spectrum. It is a neurodevelopmental disorder. And not only autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, all those that have to do with the central nervous system, like your epilepsy, like your specific learning difficulty, which was called dyslexia, dyscalculia, or dysgraphia, all those, they fall, ADHD, they fall under neurodevelopmental disorders. And what do we mean when we say they are neurodivergent? It is because their brain works differently from the neurotypical people, like normal people, if I may say so. But what we need to understand is that also even their strength and challenges also, they are also different from ours. Let me make a good example. For autistic people, like I'm standing here, there is a light that comes direct to me. But for some autistic people that are sensitive to light, they would be now showing signs that they are affected because they are sensitive to light. Hence, I'm saying they've got their own strength and challenges which are different from ours. Next slide. Okay, what does this mean then for us as parents, for us as teachers then? It means that we need to understand that because they are not, their brain doesn't work like the rest of us, then it means even the strategies that we use as teachers, even as a parent, when you are assisting the child with homework, you cannot just use any other strategy, but you need to look at the child, and then the strategies that you use, they should be the strategies that will work for that particular child. A good example is that autistic people, they are visual. When we say they are visual, we do not mean that they have a visual impairment, but we are saying they are stimulated by the sense of sight. So if you want something to make sense to them, you must have pictures. So if you give an instruction, you might find that they take time for them to process whatever that you are saying. But if you say the instruction, if the instruction is accompanied by a picture, then it makes sense, and they just, grab that instruction just like that. So what does that mean for us then? It means that we need to ensure that lots and lots of training is done. Training for parents, training for teachers, so that they know exactly that when they are there in class, they cannot use one or two strategies, because those strategies might not work for autistic children. Then we need also to understand that there's been a paradigm shift. What do we mean by a paradigm shift? We mean to say that in the past, we need to focus on the medical model. The medical model, simple, was saying if a child cannot learn, it means there is something wrong that has to be fixed in the child. But now we are saying it is the environment. When we are saying we are moving from the medical model to a social model, we are saying instead of looking at the person to say what is wrong with this person, rather we look at the environment. Isn't the environment inhibiting this person from performing to the best of their ability? Like, for instance, I would make an example, not even about autistic people. Let's say one of us was wheelchair bound. You cannot have a person who is in a wheelchair sitting right at the back, because when they have to move, they will bump into other people. Rather, they are seated in front so that when they want to move, they can just move swiftly and go out without disturbing anyone. Hence, we are saying it is the environment that has to change, not the person. So that is why I'm saying we have shifted. There's been a shift from a medical model to a social model. So let me make a good example about autistic people. So if you're a teacher and you just bring a textbook and you want children to read from the textbook, autistic people, like I said, they are visual. So you rather bring a gadget. When you give them, even if it's a story, you can download the story or you can save it and you give them a tablet, whether they listen or they read, because some of them, they are born with hyperlexia, meaning that they have the ability to read and write at an early age. By the time they are 4, they are able to read numbers, to read words, to identify alphabets and blend and form words. So when you give them a textbook to read from the textbook, they might not be stimulated. And as a teacher or as a parent, you might think that there's something wrong with this child. No. It is the strategy that you as a parent, you use in order for that child to learn. The strategy that you are using as a teacher for the child to learn. We need to use diverse strategies, and we need to identify the strength of the child, not only focus on the deficit, because even with parents, even when you do an assessment, when you ask the parent will say, this one cannot, is unable. So you only hear about the negatives. No, you will never hear a parent saying, but he's good in doing 1, 2, 3. So the shift is saying, can we focus on the positive than on the negatives? Can we focus on what the person can do best than focusing on their deficit? And then can we provide then the assistive devices that will then make their learning to be effective? or their communication. Let's say you have a child that is non-speaking or non-verbal, an autistic child that is non-speaking. So that child will, at a long run, because they are unable to express their emotions and feelings, the child wants water, but the child cannot speak. So then the child will, because the child doesn't know, they will end up having a meltdown, whereby they will be banging their heads against the wall or screaming and doing all sorts of things. And we then focus on the behavior. We are saying this child has a behavioral problem. We are not asking what could have triggered the behavior. Because this child is non-speaking, this child cannot express their feelings. They cannot tell you that they are thirsty. Instead of having pictures on your fridge, pictures on your cupboard, a pitcher of water, a glass of water, milk, Danone, apple, whatever, so that when the child wants water or wants juice, they can just grab your hand and go to the fridge and point at whatever that they want. So then you find that the child will then have a meltdown. A meltdown is when the child is uncontrollable now. It is because they've been trying to send this message, but this message doesn't come through or across to the person. Then they have a meltdown. And most of the time, you find that the child is being blamed. Instead of looking at the environment, like I was saying, is the environment conducive so that this child can then be able to communicate, so that we use multimodal strategies so that the child, even if the child is 2 years, can be able to communicate with us at home or at school if the child is school going. Okay, so here, this is just a summary of what I've already touched on some of the things. So when we talk of autism spectrum, this is the bigger picture. We're talking of the executive function. We're talking about the theory of mind, which is mind blindness. We're talking about hidden curriculum, pragmatics, self-awareness, flexible thinking. These are the things that an autistic people will have a challenge with. I'll just make one simple example. For instance, when we talk of pragmatics, you will find that an autistic child is able to speak, but at times you find that when you speak to them, they will not be reciprocal. So they are not going to be giving you the answers that you are expecting. It is because maybe we are using we need to develop the language that they have by doing role play and also using visual cues, like I was saying earlier on. When we talk of the executive function, executive function has to do with the planning, the organization, and all of that. So, like, we knew that we were coming to church and the awareness was going to start at 6:30. So we are here, we are seated by 6:20, meaning because our executive function is tip-top. But for autistic people, they have a challenge with that. So this is just a summary of what we're going to be speaking about. Okay. Then, what does the DSM-5 say about autism? The DSM-5, it is the diagnostic manual that is there, which was issued. It was issued in 2013. It just says, when we talk of autism, there are two domains: social interaction and social communication, which means that a person could be speaking or verbal, or the person could be non-verbal. That is number one. And then social interaction, you find that they do not maintain eye contact, like I was saying earlier on. And you'll find that they cannot make friends or they cannot initiate friendship. And when it comes to social communication, like I was saying, you find that even when you talk to them, some of them, they will just repeat whatever that we have said, or they will repeat one and the same word, which is called echolalia, whereby they are just echoing that particular word. And some of the parents, they make a mistake of wanting the child to shut up. The echolalia is a good way of communication, of learning to speak. So as the child keeps on repeating those sounds or those words, that is how they learn the language also. And the second one, it is about the repetitive and the restricted patterns of behavior. So for autistic people, you find that they do not become bored. They do one and the same thing Monday up to Monday. So if a child likes dinosaurs, the child will be playing with dinosaurs every day. So when you're telling a story which is not about dinosaurs, then the child is not going to focus because they are only stimulated by dinosaurs. So that is the repetitive and the restricted patterns of behavior that we are talking about. To say, like I was saying, you can talk to the child and you find that because the topic of interest, the topic that we are dealing with is not of interest to them, they're not going to focus and engage with you. But it doesn't mean that it's because they do not have the language. It is because that particular topic is not of interest to them. So another good example on the restricted patterns of behavior, you'll find that when they're playing, you know boys, when they play cars, they will put the car down and they will like zoom, and they will like drive the car on the carpet. But for autistic kids, they will just line the cars. They will put them in a row, or they will just look at the wheels and play with the wheels, meaning that they are stimulated, by the wheels. So whatever that they do is different, just like I said. That is why I emphasized earlier on to say, as parents, as teachers, we need to understand so that whatever strategy that we use even at home, so when we're doing homework, if I have 3 kids, I cannot use the same strategy because I know that this autistic child of mine learns differently and does things differently. So the strategy that works for the other 2 will not work for this one. And I mustn't push the child because that is when they develop meltdown, because I want them to learn the way I want them. What is important, it is to find out what are the strengths of the child and teach the child the way they want to be taught. So you must identify what is it that they like. You use that for them to learn. Okay, so they avoid eye contact. I've already said that. They prefer playing alone. Even if they are in a group, the other 4 kids will be playing together that game. They will just focus on whatever that they are doing, but they are there, but they are not part of the group. And you find that they've got advanced vocabulary, yet they still struggle. I did mention this earlier on. And they also have a problem of responding to broad questions. The reason for that, it is also because as parents, you give an instruction which you can divide into 3 questions, in fact, which is very long. And because also you are giving it orally, that is why it doesn't make sense to this child. Hence, it is important that you either write it down. When you write it down, when they're able to read, it makes sense for them because they can read and understand and process easily. Because some of our autistic kids, they take time to process the information. So when you give an instruction, then allow time so that they can then digest what you are saying. So even as a teacher, when you ask a question and then you're saying, Nelly, no, you give time for them so that they process and then they can get back to you with the response. Even when you're giving work, you cannot give 10 sums at a go and you want this child to do 10 sums. Allow them time, break the work into small chewable chunks so that they understand. You give them 3, they do the 3, then they're done, you give another 1. When you break the work, you make it easier for them to understand and also to be part of that class because everything it works for them. But when you flood them, then they become overwhelmed. Even if they know, then they become overwhelmed and then they have that sense and they develop anxiety. And most of the parents are not aware that most of the time autistic kids, they're anxious. At times, even us as parents, you find that if you as a parent, you are also anxious, the child will tap on you and the child will then develop anxiety. So it is important that you allow time. Even when you're giving whatever, whether the instruction, whatever that you do with the child, allow for time so that the child can then digest and be able to understand what you are saying and then respond to you. And children with ASD, they may communicate, interact, behave, and learn ways that are different. That's what we must know all the time. They are not going to do things the normal way. We have to take that into cognizance. And another challenge that they have, they do not understand that the way they act impacts on other people. And that is why earlier on I spoke about the executive function and the theory of mind. Because for autistic people, even when you frown, you know, I brought my granddaughter here. So if she's speaking to me, maybe as I'm presenting here, I can just frown. She will know that I want her to keep quiet. But when you frown to an autistic person, it doesn't make sense. They will continue. That is why when you go to malls and stuff, people will think autistic kids are, they think they are brats, you know, because they do not understand that a person who's autistic, you can't just give an oral instruction. It doesn't make sense. That is why they're not going to respond. Hence, it is important that we teach our community, we teach our church and everyone, our society, so that they understand and they do not add. Because having a child that is autistic on its own, it's a challenge as a parent. So you have a psychosocial challenges as a parent. So when the community doesn't support you, then you have two challenges now. So we need to understand that. We also have to understand that, like I said earlier on, they cannot express their feelings and emotions the way that we understand. They also have delayed processing. Hence, we said we need to give time for them so that they can also understand. And we said they're unable to focus on the detail. So when you read a story and there are no pictures and all of that, when you ask them questions based on the story, they will just give you vague answers, not because they have a problem, because that is what then teachers think, that this child has a problem, you know. It is because of the way that that particular activity was rendered in class. There were no pictures that were involved. There were no devices that were involved. So it didn't make sense to this child. Hence, they will then give you those vague answers instead of giving you everything in depth, because that is what you were expecting from the child. But your method of teaching, you did not include the child when you were teaching. So it is important that the strategy that we use for these kids so that they can be part of the class, they can be able to give you whatever answers that you seek, that we ensure that whatever that we do with them, they are visual cause all the time. They have a challenge with sustaining attention. So if a period is 1 hour, or if you are doing homework at home and you want this child to study for an hour, the child will not be able to do that. You have to break the work into chunks, because they will be able to focus for the first 30 minutes, but after that, then they are not. Remember, they are easily distracted. And so maybe there will be other external, stimulus that will then distract them from focusing. So it is important that we understand that their work has to be broken into chunks. And then I spoke of the repetitive and restricted patterns of behavior. So here we are saying, I've already mentioned the learning of object. They also insist on the sameness. Like I said, they can play the same game over and over and over, or they want you to read them the same story over and over. They don't get bored. Hence, when they are playing with the other kids, you need to teach the other kids in class or in school, at home, so that they understand that why this child wants to play one and the same activity. Because that is why then the other kids will not want then to socialize with them. And remember, autistic people, they lack social skills. We need to develop those. So as parents, hence it is important that we also talk to our kids that are there at home so that they understand why they are doing whatever that they do, the way they do it. And then the preoccupation and the obsession, whereby, like I said, they will be preoccupied with the dinosaurs or with a teddy bear or with cars, whereby if you ask a lift from your colleague, you'll find that there are so many cars and small cars in the seat, in the boot, everywhere. When you are sitting on the couch, there is a car. You know, you wonder, what is it now? Because they will have this in every way. That is how they are. We need to understand. But then they have a challenge with sensory issues. When we talk of sensory issues, next slide. Oh, they have a problem with sensory issues, like it has to do with the senses. And mostly when us as parents or teachers are not aware of the challenge that they are experiencing from the senses, they then develop a meltdown, like I said earlier on. So you find that they will seek sensory stimulation or sensory input. I'll make an example. For a child, senses may be heightened or lowered. We used to say they will be hypersensitive or they are hyposensitive. So when they are hyposensitive, it means they need more input. So you would find that those that are hypersensitive to touch, they would love to hug. But those that are hypersensitive to touch, even a child who's 2 years, you know, they like hugging and all of that. You'll find that when you want to hug them or touch them, they run away from you because it's painful. But they can't explain to you that, no, don't touch me. So, but for those that are hypo, they would need more. So you need to understand, you need to observe your child so that you know exactly what is it exactly that the child is struggling with. And taste, you find that they have preferences. So you find that it has to do with the texture. So they would love chips, but if they prefer soft, they will only focus on Lay's. You buy knickknacks, they're not gonna eat them because they are sensitive to texture. So you need to understand. As much as you will have to introduce the different kind of foods, but you need to work with the OT and the speech therapist so that you know exactly how and when to introduce the other food. Because you'll find that your child maybe your child loves noodles, so if they prefer soft. So they will never ever touch something that is hard. So one might think that this child is spoiled, you know, because they want this. Why can't they eat this and that? It is because they have sensory issues. Hence, it is important that you seek the assistance of an occupational therapist. Those that are sensitive to light, like I said, if they are hypersensitive to light, by now they'll be jumping up and down because of the light that shone on their face. Hence, it is important that when you know that your child is hypersensitive to light and you're going out, you're going shopping and all of that, bring sunglasses so that they can wear them, or you a hat so that they can wear and they avoid the direct sunlight. Let's say you are in a mall and they're sensitive to light. You know, especially during Christmas and stuff, you find that there are a lot of flickering lights and all of that. And you find that the child is now making noise and screaming. And it is because the child, as a parent, you need to understand, what is it? I remember last year I spoke about the star, to say, look at the setting. What is it in the setting, the environment, that could be triggering? Look at the trigger. So you look at the environment. Oh, we are in a mall. What could be the trigger? Oh, the lights, all these lights that are flickering, you know. And then you have to ensure that, oh, okay, then my child is sensitive to light. Then remove the child from the environment. When you remove the child from the environment, then the child will not have a meltdown. So it is important that you understand your child, and each and every time you must identify, look at the environment. Even when you go to a restaurant and all of that, look at the environment where you are. If the child is sensitive to noise, you can't go to a restaurant that is going to be full. There will be a lot of noise and the banging and all of that, because they're going to start screaming and shouting and making all sort of noise, because the noise that comes to them, they cannot bear the noise. But for you, you'll be sitting and chatting with your friends and your family. You don't see a problem because we are neurotypical. So it is important to look at the environment so that you remove the child from the environment, or you provide an intervention, like you would bring headphones so that they can then reduce and alleviate the sound that comes into their ears. And then the smell. Some autistic kids, I remember when we grew up, because I'm from the rural areas, there were kids who would make a poo and then they would touch it and then they would it was because they were sensitive to smell. We didn't know. We would think of all sort of things. Hence, it is important that as a parent, if your child is sensitive to smell, find the particular smell that they like. Let's say maybe I'm visiting your home and they love the smell of my perfume. And we know that autistic kids, they lack social skills. Remember, they do not know what is social appropriate and what is social inappropriate. So the child would just come to me and cling on me. For some people, they would be like, but because we understand, we know, oh, okay, there might be something that is attracting this child. What is it? Then as a parent, you find a bottle of that smell so that you give the child that empty, then the child can be able to smell that and then they get stimulated. Okay, next slide, sir. So here, our autistic kids, they do not just have autism, but most of the time, autism, there will be other co-occurring disorders that comes with autism. For some, it will be ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and for some, whereby you find that maybe the child doesn't even sleep at night, and the parent will tell you that this one can stay until 2 o'clock, which is why when they go to school the following morning, they're not going to pay attention. Because remember, for the mind to perform well, you must rest. And for kids, they must sleep like 8 hours. So it is important for us as parents and teachers also, once I've identified that this child doesn't sit still, this child is walking around even when given activities to do in class, if this child is moving around, then I then find out from the parent, are you aware of 1, 2, and 3? Have you noticed that? What is he doing at home? So that then the child can then take the child. If the child has attention issues, then the parent can take the child to a child psychologist or a pediatric neurologist. Maybe the child needs medication, but it will depend on the severity of the challenges that the child has. For some challenges, the child might not even require medication, but with some interventions that are put in place, the child can then cope and be able to go on with their lives. So we also have kids that have, like I mentioned earlier on, that mostly autistic kids, they have anxiety all the time. It's just that as a parent, you are not aware. They will have depression. You are not even aware as a parent. So they will also come with specific learning difficulty, whereby they will be able to read, write, and spell, but you find that they have dyslexia, so they will be reversing their B's for D's, the U for N, the W for M and stuff. They can also reverse the whole word, whereby instead of saying, I was going to town, they say, I saw, so they reverse. Or instead of a lawnmower, they say a mown-lower, so they reverse. At times they might have a problem, but mostly they are good in mathematics. It's just that parents and teachers are not even aware of that. Autistic kids are so good when it comes to maths. Remember, they are good with gadgets. So maths and gadgets, it goes together. So you need to be able to identify that problem. But when it comes to reading, writing, and spelling, you will find that they have a problem with that, whereby with spelling, they either jumble the words. You find that all the letters are there, but they are jumbled. So they're writing Dunge, the D will be there, and then it will be the N, and then the U, and then maybe the E, and then the G. So all the letters are there, but they're jumbled. So we need to understand, because the department has issued a policy which is called SIAS, which is Screening, Identification, Assessment, and Support. So all teachers that are there in school, they know it was promulgated in 2014. It comes with concessions, which means that if a child has a spelling problem, then the child has to get a spelling flag. So as a teacher, I'm marking, and I know that this child has been assessed and has been diagnosed with a spelling problem. Then I do not mark the child, then for spelling, the child is not penalized for spelling. Yes. Hence, it is said that a computer or a laptop can also be used as a concession. So the child can start from grade 4 using a computer so that by the time they get to grade 12, they're familiar, they're fast, they're using the computer. It is there, it is listed as one of the concessions. But at times as parents, we are not even aware of that. So it's a policy, it's there for the department, and we need to know about it, that those concessions, the extra time, the breaking of the work, like I was saying, that it is called refocusing and redirecting. So the teacher, whilst teaching, can then go past the child and then touch the child on the shoulder. Then the child will then come back if the child has autism and ADHD, so the attention problem. Or maybe whilst teaching, then the teacher is going to say, Nelly, but before the teacher can do that, the teacher must have had a one-on-one with the child to say, if I say that you are now daydreaming or distracted, I will call your name. That the teacher must have that one-on-one so that the child knows that, oh, okay, then they come back. Okay. And medically, like I said, they might have insomnia, and then, like I said, they will not sleep, then they come at school, they are tired and all of that. And also they will have like constipation issues. There are so many other medical issues that they can come up with. I just mentioned just a few. Yes, Sam? Okay, the theory of mind. What is the theory of mind? It is the ability to understand other people's thoughts and emotions. You know, when I'm tired, you can see when I'm tired, which Nelly is tired now. You can see by the way I stand and all of that. But autistic people, they are unable to read our emotions or other people's emotions and feelings. Hence, I said earlier on, you might frown and they continue doing whatever that they're doing. It's not because they are rude. They're not rude. They don't get it because the strategy that you are using, the frowning, it doesn't make sense to them. Hence, it is important that we use the strategy that they understand. Yes? So when we talk of the executive function, there are three things that we need to know and focus on as parents, as teachers. The working memory, the short-term memory. So for autistic kids, the working memory, it is the ability to hold on into the information in your mind so that you can use it for future. So your short-term and your long-term memory. So hence it is important that autistic kids, we need to understand that they have a problem with this. As it is important that whenever we teach them, there must be visuals because it makes it easy for them it makes sense, and even for them to retract whatever information that you have taught them. The cognitive flexibility. Autistic people, they are people that works with a routine. So they cannot have 1, 4, 7. For them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Today, tomorrow, yesterday, and next year. So it is important for parents to have visual schedules at home. I do have a picture of a visual schedule because last year I forgot. So you must have a visual schedule, whether as a teacher or at home. Even if the child is level 1, they can read, but the pictures, they make it easy for them to remember. So let's say, so the cognitive flexibility, it is the inability to switch from one activity to another activity. So if they know that every morning they wake up, they make their bed, they brush their teeth, and then they eat a cereal, and then they take a bath, and then they leave. And then the following day, then you wake them up, you want them to take a bath, they're gonna scream. They're gonna give you hell. It is because you have disrupted their routine. So as parents, you need to understand that that is how the routine should be. So if there is going to be change, make sure that you alert the child 2 days before. Let's say tomorrow you're going to be visiting Nelly's house. So you go to the calendar, you show the child if maybe they cannot, we've got levels of autism. There's level 1, 2, and 3. So for level 1, you tell them, but you also show them on the calendar to say, okay, we're going to Nelly's house on Friday. Okay, so let's count how many days are left. Oh, it's Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, And then Wednesday, you say, okay, remember we're going to Mneli's house on Friday? How many days are left now? Oh, Thursday and Friday. Oh, okay. And then on Thursday, you also. So when you go to Mneli's house, the child is not going to give you a challenge. But when you just wake up in the morning and then you decide that you're coming to my house, the child is going to give you hell throughout the journey. When the child takes a bath, up to the journey and all of that, because you have disrupted their routine. So it is important even at school to have a schedule and then pictures that are there, so that it makes easy. Even if there is going to be an excursion, the child should be told and be given sort of a brief of what to expect in that excursion. We can't just say we are going to be visiting Newcastle, and we are not going to tell the child what is it that you're going to be doing there and all of that. Have pictures so that it makes sense. Oh, okay, when we go to Newcastle, this is what we're going to do. We're going to drive along N3, this is what we'll see, and this is what we'll do when we get to Newcastle. And then your child will then be like this, will not have, not tantrums, meltdowns. Okay, and then ability to avoid distractions. That is the inhibitory control. So we have self-control. You know when to stop. You know. But for autistic people, they lack that. We have to teach them. Okay, let's continue. So we are saying autistic people, they have executive dysfunction. There's executive function, but for autistic people, we must take into cognizance that they have executive dysfunction. So for them to have a plan, that is why they have a routine, so that they know that we're going from 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say the child is still at home. You must have a picture of a child waking up, and a child brushing the teeth, having cereal, and going to the bathroom, to the toilet. You have a picture of a toilet. And then maybe they come back, then they play games, you have a picture of a computer or a TV. So everything must be visual. Then the child will then understand. So as you do that, after a month, they just learn like that. Remember, autistic kids, they're very clever. It's just that, Tina, we want them to do things the way we want them. That is why we think that, no, they won't be able to do this. So, like I said, they have a challenge with planning, organizing, and also focusing on details. I did make an example of that earlier on. And they also find it difficult to see things from your perspective. I did speak about that. And they also have a challenge to understand that other people have desires and beliefs that are different from them. So when they say whatever that they say, they think you understand and you know that it has to be like that, because they thinking that whatever that they think their beliefs, you also believe, you're sharing the same beliefs and thoughts and perspective, yet we do not. Hence, it is important to take them through all the time. Okay, I did talk about not maintaining eye contact, but here it says finding eye contact a difficult skill to master. Like, for instance, I was saying that you cannot just, maybe if there was something, or maybe if the pastor was coming through the door, I would wink and you would understand that there's something. But for autistic kids, they will not understand that. So it is important that we understand that we have visual cues all the time, because they have a problem of understanding nonverbal. So, like I said, when you raise your eyebrows, you mean disapproval, we all know that, but they don't. Hence, you must have a picture. At times, you must write it down or have a picture of something, and then you put a red. Then they understand. When you put green, they understand that, oh, that one is correct. So if you are saying no, you put that picture and you put a red cross, then they understand. And I did talk about this as well in the interest of time. I did also mention that they cannot focus they cannot focus on the whole. They have a problem of focusing on the whole. And so as a teacher, like I said, ensure that you break, even when you're teaching. You can't just read. Some teachers, let's say the story is 3 pages. They will read the whole 3 pages for a grade 1 and grade 2, whereas they were supposed to break that in chunks and also involve some questions and pictures so that you can see that the child is still with you. I'm talking about neurotypical kids. Then it is like that also for our autistic children. And this might affect their ability to learn. I'm dying. I think it's the light and the age as well, I think. Okay. So, like I'm saying, when you read a story, the learner might remember just those details, not the whole thing, like I said earlier on. And now let us talk about the tantrums, because you find people saying the child was throwing a tantrum. What is a tantrum? What is a meltdown? How do these two differ? So that we know when a child is throwing a tantrum, so that you don't give in as a parent. Because as autistic parents, at times, you have a tendency to give in to the child's demands, even when you are not supposed to. So it is important that we know the difference. So a tantrum, it is when a person doesn't get his way. So the child wants ice cream, and as a parent, you are saying no. So you will know that it's a tantrum because they are still in control. So they know they will keep on coming and looking at you and going to the fridge. You know, which they know they're in control. But for a meltdown, they are not in control. That is why when a child bangs, no one can bang himself against the wall. So it shows that they've lost control. It is because they are overwhelmed. So that is the difference. So when it's a tantrum, they will see that they will see the reaction that they're getting, whether it's negative or positive. So if each time they cry and you do that, they will always do that, they will cry all the time, then they know that mommy is going to give me. So that's a tantrum. But the meltdown, even when you give them something that they love, they still continue to do that. So that is how you differentiate the two. Because when it's a tantrum, you give them whatever of interest to them, then they stop. Then they continue. Even if they were crying, then they smile, they continue, they're telling the stories and doing whatever. But if it's a meltdown, you give them their best toy. You give them the gadget that they love. They continue. Then you know that, oh, okay, this is a meltdown. And you know that, okay, now the child is not in control. The child might be in danger. So you're checking what is it that is there that might hurt this child. For instance, if they are banging their heads against the wall, you need to ensure that you remove the child, sit down with the child. But if they don't want to, you can just leave them, let them be. If they're sleeping or lying on the floor, let them be, and then just watch that they are safe. And then a tantrum can end quickly if the solution or the situation, if the situation is resolved, or if you give them the solution, whatever that they want, then they stop. But for the meltdown, they don't stop, like I said earlier on. So what is important is that let us understand that for the tantrum, it is easily managed with interventions. So whether you redirect the child. For instance, if the child wants ice cream, then you tell them a story about maybe the restaurant that you went to the other day, and you engage them on that. You are just redirecting them from the activity that they want. And if they buy that, then they continue, then they forget about the ice cream that they asked. Yes, sir. Then the difference now between the tantrum and the meltdown. So with the meltdown, it's a true panic. You know, it's like, the stage is the fight, flight, and freeze. So because the child doesn't have control. So it goes on and on. So it starts small. You know, like a thunderstorm, when it's going to be thunder, you'll hear like there will be like lightning first. And then before you see the storm, there are stages. So that is the meltdown. So you have to be able to detect, okay, so each time he does this, then it means there's going to be a meltdown. For some kids, they will start pacing up and down. So you know that when they are on the loop, when they are moving up and down like that, it means the meltdown is coming. When they start banging their head, when they do different things, so you need to be able to monitor your child so that you know what is it that they do before they have a meltdown, so that you can avoid or prevent the meltdown. So in a meltdown, the brain is trying to survive by escaping the overload and rebounding. Hence, I said it is important to look at the environment to see what is it that is making this child to be overwhelmed, so that you remove the child from that. For instance, if it's a mall, but if you are at home, then you will know maybe you remove the child, you put the child in a safe space. If your child, you need to know also, what is the safe space for this child? Maybe they love your bedroom, and then you can take them to your bedroom, or maybe they've got their specific corner, then you can take them to that specific corner where they can go and then calm down before the whole meltdown, in order to avoid the meltdown. So you need to look at the steps to see, okay, now that he's doing this, okay, let me act fast. Okay, and also when it comes to a meltdown, there are physiological changes. Like you would see that the pupils, for some kids, they will become dilated. There will be palpitations, their increased heart rate. At times, they will feel hot and all of that. So those are signs. That's not a tantrum. That's how you differentiate the two. Okay. And remember, during the meltdown, the child is not even aware of other people or of other people's reaction, to their meltdown. But with the tantrum, they know. You're going to the fridge, you're opening, you're giving them the ice cream, they see. Then they change. By the time you reach the fridge, when you're on your way, they've reducing the crying because they know that they're getting what they want, And also, in the meltdown, the child is unaware of their personal safety and the safety of others. Hence, it is important for you as an adult to ensure that the child is safe and ensure that you remove whatever barrier that is there that might hurt the child. And they do not have control of their body, over their body. Hence, it is important. Like I'm saying, if you know which they bang their head, make sure that you buy. There is that headgear that you can put, like the one that is worn by cyclists, that one. They can put it over their head. So when they go to school, so that whenever when they have a meltdown at school, then they put that so that we avoid them having to bang their head, on the floor or wherever. So we do that, you have to do that. And also, they are unable to calm down. Hence, it is important that you talk to the child, reassure the child that everything is going to be okay. But you don't have to touch them. But you can just say that, speak in a soft voice, and then try and see, maybe then the child will then calm down after a certain time. And it is important that we write social stories. A social story would be, maybe a child likes to play outside. Like all autistic people, they love the outdoor. So now that it's raining, the child is going to be clinging on the door, wanting to go out. So what are you supposed to do as a parent? You're supposed to write a social story, have a social story about all the things that the child is doing that you want the child to stop. So you write the social story. And maybe you're saying, playing outside. I love playing outside. I love it when I go to play outside. I love seeing the sun or whatever. You see how creative you can be. But at times, it rains and I cannot go out. it makes me sad you put a sad face. So initially when you said, I love going out, you put a happy face. So, and also you put the rain. You can do this even with a pen. We would do that when we were in Action in Autism, because you don't have the time to go and type and all of that. You write the social story, you put the pictures and stuff. So you say, when it rains, and then you put, those signs for the rain. Mommy doesn't like it when I go out in the rain because I will get sick. And then you put the picture of a doctor or whatever, or you put the stethoscope. They know that's worn by the doctor. And when I sick, mommy gets sad. You put mommy's picture, mommy's sad face. But when I stay indoors and play indoors when it's raining, mommy becomes happy. And I love it when mommy is happy. No, I'm just making an example. You can create it anyway, but it must have the visuals. The important thing are the visuals. So for whatever that you want your child to change or to stop doing, write a social story all the time. If they can read, give them that, then they can read and they understand. And the social story, remember, you read it over and over and over. With autistic people, it is the consistency that is important. Hence, even with the visual schedule, it is the consistency that is important. You can have the visual schedule, but if you're not emphasizing and you're not talking through, the child is not going to learn even the language if the child is non-speaking. I don't know how many minutes I have. Okay, so what causes the meltdown then? I said sensory overload, information overload. Hence, it is important for a teacher to break the work into chunks. Because if there is too much information, let's say you are a parent, you have to do the maths, the language, and whatever homework, and you tell the child, we're going to be doing this homework. You make sure that you do not overload the child. Because when you overload, that's when then you see then the child will then end up having a meltdown. So ensure that the information is not too much. Okay. And then emotional overload. Like I said, most of the time, they can feel panic to strong emotions, theirs and ours as well. So you need to guard against that as well, so that we then avoid the child having meltdowns. Lack of communication skills. And remember, like I said earlier on, the child would want something but will not be able to tell you. Even if, let's say the child is 6 years and the child wants to go to the toilet, but then the child cannot tell you. So if you're not using, have pictures at home, or signs, at home, that you can use. You can Google the signs like the toilet. So teach your child as early as 2 years to say, we're going to the toilet. You show the child the picture and the sign of a toilet. Oh, you want more. And then the child will know, you want more. You want more? Maybe the child has finished ice cream and the child wants more. But the child now is going to throw, because the child cannot tell you that they want more, they're going to throw. Then you're going to ask, you say, do you want more ice cream? Then you show them, or the bowl, to say, you want more ice cream? Or you're saying, no, we are finished now, finished. Then they need to learn all those signs. A few signs that we use on a day-to-day basis so that they understand and avoid their frustration as well as our frustrations as well. And the fear of uncertainty. Like I said earlier on, you can't just wake up this morning and saying, hey, we're going to Spur. They're not going to be excited. You must have told them. So if you want them to go to Spur, go to your visual schedule. Under bath and having breakfast, put a picture of Spur. You take pictures of everything. Take a picture of school so that you put it there. Then the child will then understand. So then the child, if you just, let's say, because of the road works, now you want to change the route. You can't change the route. You need to take them throughout, to say, because the road, there's been an accident. Oh my goodness. So now we need to change the route. So we are not going to go past the BP garage. We have to change. So now in the next robot, we're going to turn left. And normally you would pass the robot. But this time, because of the accident, you have to turn left. So we're going to turn left, and there we're going to drive for like 500 meters, and we're going to pass a school, and we're going to take the child through the route so that they know what to expect. But that is why some parents will tell you that the child will hold on onto the steering. Because now we have changed the route without telling them. You are not aware of the accident. You just saw the accident. So you act. As a parent, you need to think on your toes. So talk through. When you talk them through, they understand. We are saying, okay, it's okay. We're going to reach school. We are not going to be late. Even if we are late, we're going to talk to Miss So-and-so. We're going to tell Miss So-and-so that we had an accident. And then you take them through the route. And then you're saying, oh, wow. Then there are few cars this side. That you continue talking throughout, then they understand. And then the processing difficulties, I did mention this earlier on, to say it makes them to struggle a lot. So for some kids, for instance, if they have a meltdown, some kids would require more input, like I said earlier on. They would require input. So if they require input like this one, you can use this gym ball. You lie the child down on the floor, and then you roll the ball, throughout the body, up and down, on top of the hand, yes, up and down. And they enjoy that because they need that, they need that deep pressure. There is even a deep pressure vest that you can buy so that the child can then get that, because they need that sensory input. Then they need that. Early in the morning, maybe before they take a bath, there is a brush that you can also buy from Take-A-Lot, and then you brush them. You're giving them that sensory input that they require. Then you brush them. You're giving them that. And then by doing that, they will be able to manage themselves, to contain themselves throughout the day, because you are giving them that. You can also give them a bear hug from back. So you see the child will be in front, and then you do like this, then you give them that dip. As if it's painful. You might think it's painful, but it's not painful. It gives them pleasure. It's just that they cannot explain that to you. So those that requires more. So for some, like I said earlier on, their cups are half filled. They need more. But for some, you find that their cups are filled. So it means you need to remove them from the environment. You still remember that? Okay. Barriers to learning. So as teachers, as parents, we need to understand, I did mention this, you will find that the child will have problem with reading or reciprocating what the neurotypical social cues, like I said earlier on. So even as the teacher, you can give that instruction and do whatever nonverbal cues to the rest, but go to this child and talk to this child. And also talk to the child even prior to that. So the sensitivity, like we said earlier on, we did mention, and we said, let us not use a blanket approach, when teaching, but let us look at this particular child and identify the strength and capitalize on the strength. So the best gadget that works well for these kids, it is pictures, it is your iPads, your tablets. When you give them that, that's it. We have GoTalks. You can also buy a GoTalk as a parent because you program it so that when a child wants to go to the toilet, they just press. Those that do not have speech, who are still like young and stuff, or even if they are not young, they're at school. Remember, we have got 3 levels. If they're level 2 and 3, you program, and then if they want food, if they cannot sign, then they use that. So they are clever and in mainstream school and maybe doing grade 11 and 12, but they do not have speech, they still use the gadget to talk to you. So they will send you SMSs so that you understand. Even if when you see they're not feeling well, you ask them all the time, engage with the child. What is it? Are you okay? Is there anything troubling you and stuff, so that the child can be able to interact with you and also to avoid the child having meltdown and banging the doors and stuff just because they see that no one is taking note of their needs and all of that. Okay, this is just an example of a visual schedule that you can have. You can go to Google and Google your own, download your own beautiful pictures, but it says wake up, brush teeth, take a bath, put clothes, eat breakfast, and then you can put a picture of a school here, and then, or a school bag, and then the bus. So if it's a bus, you don't put a picture of a bus. You put the picture of that specific bus, not just any bus. So if they go to school with their uncle's car, you put that uncle's car. So if you're going to change the car that particular day, because we've heard stories that some kids, they're used to going with daddy. So that particular day, daddy took mommy's car, and the child says, I'm not getting in. So hence it is important to tell the child, to say, today we're using mommy's. Tell the child prior, not when you're getting into the car. Okay, so as it is, I'm not going to go through, I'm sorry, but this is just to give you a clue for those parents or maybe teachers to say, what is it that you can add? If the child is still not toilet trained, maybe after having breakfast, you can put a toilet. And then maybe if the child is not school going, you can have games, and then you have a snack, and then you have another toilet. So, and remember, for toilet training, the consistency. So the toilet must be there throughout the day. When you go to the toilet, you take the child, and you have, there is a toilet training sheet I didn't put here. You put all those steps, and you talk through them so that the child knows that, oh, I'm here. Now I have to pull down my pant, I need to sit, and the pictures are there. So as a parent, we are talking. Then the child sits, and then you do whatever they do. There's a picture of one rolling the tissue, wiping. You are talking. By talking, you are instilling the language for those that do not have a language. That's the best way that you can use. And then for those learners that are requiring low levels of support, like we said, they are visual thinkers. And they've got very strong verbal skills. So they're very good. They can talk. They are good even in whatever that they do in class. For some teachers, they are not even able to identify that the child is autistic. They will only detect that after letting the kids write a test. And they'll be like, who's this one who's getting 70? Because they don't even know the name, because this child doesn't even engage during the teaching and learning. They don't engage with the teacher. So it is important for you as a teacher to understand and be able to identify the signs, like I said. You will find that it is, let's say you have this child in your class, and you want to group your kids. You cannot put this child in a group of 4, group of 6. They're going to become overwhelmed. Remember, they love their space. They like doing things on their own. Now you put them in a group of 4. So you put them in a group of 2 and ensure that the body, the one that you are twinning them with, you train them so that they understand, because kids are kids and kids can be mean at times. They might utter some things, that is not good to the other child. Okay, so unfortunately I'm wrapping now. They are routine-oriented, rule-based, like I said, but also remember that they are not flexible. So you cannot move them. If the period is for English and then there comes a maths teacher, the teacher should go to the child and then tell the child that, no, because of 1, 2, 3, that is why we are having maths now instead of English. Then the child will understand. Thank you. Overloaded. Sensory overload, yeah?
Maybe a few questions before she takes a seat. Practical questions. I think because a lot of learning. Now,
Okay.
Yeah, here it is.
We should switch it on.
When children were growing up in, I don't know, 60s, then the parents weren't really advised of things like this. For the most part, nobody ever knew that there were problems. And then as you get older, how do you know, like when an adult has autism? Is that tested in different ways?
Thank you. No. The autism can be diagnosed even at the age of 50. I remember last year there was a guy from Cape Town, I've forgotten his name. He was launching his book at Action in Autism, and he told us that he was diagnosed at 42 or 45, and he was an engineer. But everyone at work looked at him. They gave him that look because they didn't understand how that he was, the way that he was acting and everything, because he didn't do things like the rest. So even if you are an adult, we also look at you. You will find that you do not interact with other people. When we're supposed to be gathering and you don't want to be there, you just want to keep to yourself. And at times, Tina, especially us as blacks, we tend to think that maybe, what do you say when you say, umuntu uyazitshela, like you, what? You're bigger than your boots or whatever. Something to say that, like you think you're better than the rest of us, Yet, a person might be having traits of autism. So even if it's an adult, we're also looking at the social interaction, we're looking at the social communication. The person might be verbal, might be speaking, but you still find that, oh, sorry. You should have signaled to me. Okay. Okay, my apologies. So even if a person is an adult, ADHD, autism, or whatever, it can still be diagnosed at any age. Because when it's autism, we're still looking at two things: social communication, social interaction. Are you interacting with other people, or you like spending time in your own world and all of that? We're looking at the planning. Do you like changes and stuff? Just like this, you find that there are people who would want them, who would say, who moved because they know, even if they can live for a month, they know that they've left that book of theirs in their pedestal. It was facing that direction, but now it has moved because someone was wiping the pedestal and stuff. So, but I'm saying it can be diagnosed at any time. And it's good to take the person for assessment so that we know and we also understand as the family, so that we can also support the person, because it's not like they love whatever the way that they do. It is how God created them to be. There's nothing that they can change. There's no medication that can make them to change. But it is important for us as the family, as the community, as the church, to support the person and understand, even tell other people so that they understand that this one doesn't like to mingle with people. So even if they say there's a gathering at home, then you know what, this one maybe is going to stay for like 5 minutes, and then they move into their own space, they sit there all by themselves. Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering you.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between autism and Asperger's?
Okay, so in the past, before 2013, level 1 was called Asperger's. So now it falls under autism, So it was Asperger. Asperger was on its own at that time. It was a person that was an autistic person, but at that time they were not called autistic. It was called Asperger, because at that time they were said to be high functioning. So these days now, we are no longer using the words like high functioning. We are saying they require low levels of support, because they still need support, but the support that they require is just little. It's unlike the level 2 and level 3. For level 2 and for level 3 especially, you find that those, they will not survive or be able to do things without the assistance of someone. So there has to be someone. That is why at school there would be teacher assistant, at home they will have facilitators or caregivers, because they cannot do things on their own. So Asperger is the level 1, autism level 1. Yes.
And then it gets higher.
And then, yes, Asperger is level 1. They
Yeah.
are clever, they go as far as universities, they become professors.
Yeah.
Those professors who like to spend time researching and all of that, they don't mingle with the rest of the other lecturers there.
And
It's
they,
because,
and they don't like being with people.
yes,
Because we've got a friend that has Asperger's, and the moment strangers come in, he goes out.
exactly.
He
That is why it is important for a family to do an awareness. Tell the people, the close people in your close,
Yeah.
your close family, make sure that they understand that there is this person here at home, so that they understand. And because at times they get to be labeled. Autistic people, they're labeled all the time because
And people don't like to
they
be
don't understand why they're acting like that. It's because of how God created them. There's nothing that you can do. Yes, they do learn social skills, and like when they are Asperger's, they will know the social appropriate and social inappropriate, but they still like their space. They can mingle maybe for 5 minutes and then spend the rest of the time all by themselves.
Yeah,
But it depends, yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that is very educational. Any other follow-up question, practical question? I also have a colleague who has a grown-up child with autism, and she used to share with us that it doesn't like change. Like, for example, as women, we like to change hairstyles. If my child knows me with this hairstyle, the minute I put on braids, it's another story in the house.
Don't change the furniture around.
Exactly, yes. Changing the furniture, yes.
Don't change it around, I'm going to get irritated.
Because things have to stay the way they are.
No, thank you, Sister
So
Nelly.
even in a work environment, in a workplace, it is important that the supervisor and the colleagues, they understand. Hence, it is important to do the assessment. At times, you will find that maybe the psychologist will then liaise or maybe write down, the kind of support that the person needs, so that at the workplace they understand the do's and the don'ts. Yes. Like, for instance, you cannot just say the person is used to working here, and then in the morning the person is told that you're going to move from here, you're going to be working that side. So the person has to be told prior. So if there is an emergency, then the person has to be told, but also the workplace has to be lenient. Yes, if I may put it.
It is well said. I would like to take this opportunity and say thank you very much, Sister Nesiwe, for the information you've shared with us. We may be small in this room, but we can disseminate information to friends, to families, to colleagues. And autism, as you have said, most of us are not well educated about it. And I know of even myself and some, colleagues, if you see a child, even in church, even in the mall, you call the child a spoiled brat. Yet the mom needs support, and the child needs us to embrace the child. Yeah.
If I may just share in 1 minute, we were at the airport, I think it was when was it? I think it was in March. And then there was this lady with 2 kids, one in a pram and the other one 4 years old, was running around on top of the machine. I don't know what it is called, the machine that takes the suitcases. Yes, the child would go there, and everyone was like, "Hey, don't you look at your child? Why don't you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?" I then told the people that were around me, I said, "Guys, can we just be patient with the lady and be supportive with the lady, because that child, I'm sure there's something with the child. It's not that the child is spoiled." And I went to the lady. She was so young, I think late 20s. And I asked her if the child is speaking and stuff, and I detected that the child is not speaking. And I asked her, I just told her, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Is the child doing 1, 2, 3, 4? And I could tell. Then I said to her, "Please, have you ever seen someone? So make sure that when you get to Eastern Cape, make sure that you go and see either a psychologist or a pediatric neurologist who will assist you, because the child requires some medication." Because she told me that even at home, that the child was almost, knocked by a car and all of that. So people, they think that it's because she cannot, take care of her kids. She's a bad parent, yes.
Yes. And you are labeled as a mom that, yes. It's a pity Louise has just gone out. On Sunday, she was sharing with us the same story that Steve was on the plane, her husband, and the child started doing, we call it a tantrum because we don't know.
It's a
The
meltdown.
child started doing that behavior, and everyone was irritable in the plane. And fortunately, Steve could see that this is not, the behavior is not
It's
the one
not a
that we are
normal
used to.
behavior.
And the Steve concentrated on supporting the mother in the aeroplane. Can you imagine? Yeah. Let's see. We've been talking a lot, Sissy. I just want to say that on behalf of the rector and the St. Agnes Parish, we would like to say thank you for taking time. Nelsiwe is from Gauteng Department of Education now. She came all the way to impart this knowledge to us. Yeah. And we would like to just a token of appreciation on behalf of our rector.
Rustenburg,
Yo,
working for Bojanala District as a psychologist.
thank you so much,
Thank you so
Sissy.
much.
This is our rector, Reverend Ngobo, and the parish of St. Agnes. Thank you.
I wish one day we can speak
May
about
we,
barriers
yes,
to learning.
okay.
Barriers to learning.
No, we are still going to invite you to be continued. May we ask Sis Makosi just to give us a short closing prayer, please. Thank you. Sis Makosi. Come, Sis Kosi. Yes.
Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for this evening. Thank you for this talk, this educational talk that we have just heard on autism. We hope to take this information that we gathered here tonight to our friends, to our families, and educate other people. Bless us now, Lord, as we leave this place, so that everyone gets home safe. And we thank Nelly for all the traveling and the detailed information that she has given us tonight. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen.